You're getting ready for work. You shower. You brush your teeth. You reach for your clothes and put them on. Nothing weird until you try to take them off. Your shirt won't come off. Your pants won't come off. Your underwear won't come off. Not because they're too tight, because they physically can't be removed. You pull harder. Nothing. You try cutting them. They won't tear. You try another pair. Same thing. And then you realize something terrifying. Everyone else has the same problem. At first, you might think this is just a really annoying clothing problem. Until you get sweaty. Then it starts raining. Then summer hits. Then you get sick. Suddenly, the clothes you were supposed to change every day have become a permanent layer glued to your body. And what happens when they get dirty? What happens when they smell? What happens when they start wearing out? What happens when your body changes size? And there's an even more uncomfortable question. What happens when you need medical treatment? Because today, taking your clothes off is so normal that you never think about how many parts of life depend on it. Showers, swimming, dating, sex, hospitals, surgery, exercise, sleep, even going to the bathroom. Now remove the ability to take your clothes off, and suddenly all of those ordinary things become problems that nobody has ever had to solve before. But here's the part that gets really strange. Humans wouldn't just try to live with the same clothes forever. We'd have to redesign clothing itself. Maybe clothes become waterproof. Maybe they become self-cleaning. Maybe people invent fabrics that change size with your body. And if one outfit becomes part of you for years, fashion might stop being about what you wear today and start being about what your body is going to become tomorrow. Because this isn't really a story about clothes. It's about what happens when something you thought was temporary becomes permanent. And the first place that would expose how serious this is would probably be your own body. The first few hours might actually feel normal. You get dressed. You leave the house. You go to work. Nobody notices anything unusual. Then you start sweating. Maybe you're walking in the sun. Maybe you just finished a workout. Your shirt is damp, your socks are gross, and you're thinking the same thing you normally think. I need a shower. Except now there's a problem. You can shower, but you can't take your clothes off. So the water hits the outside of your shirt. Your pants get soaked. Your underwear gets soaked. And when you step out, you're standing there wearing a wet layer that cannot be removed. That changes the meaning of a shower pretty fast. You could dry the clothes while you're still wearing them. Maybe people invent super fast body dryers. Maybe public spaces start using warm air chambers. Maybe clothing gets built with tiny channels that move water away from the skin. But the bigger issue is sweat. Your body is constantly producing it. Normally, clothes get dirty, sweaty, and eventually get replaced. In this world, eventually is the problem, because everyone is stuck with what they're wearing. Now imagine a kid growing up. They start with a tiny shirt. A few years later, they're taller. Their shoulders are wider. Their legs are longer. But the clothes are still the same clothes. So now society has to solve something it normally solves automatically. How do you make clothing grow with a human body? Suddenly, fabric isn't just fabric. It has to stretch. It has to expand. It has to survive years of movement. It has to stay comfortable through heat, cold, sweat, rain, and sleep. And it can't become disgusting after a month. That could push clothing technology in a completely different direction. Maybe fabrics become self-cleaning. Maybe they use antimicrobial surfaces. Maybe they change insulation depending on temperature. Maybe they recycle sweat and moisture. And maybe, eventually, clothing becomes less like something you wear and more like a piece of personal equipment. But there's another problem that sounds much more annoying at first. How do you change your outfit? Today, fashion works because clothing is temporary. You can wear one shirt in the morning, change for a workout, put on something nicer for dinner, and switch into pajamas at night. Take the ability to remove clothes away, and that entire system collapses. So instead of changing clothes, you might need clothes that can change themselves. A jacket that shifts color, pants that become shorts, shoes that adjust to different activities. Maybe your outfit literally has settings. Work mode, workout mode, sleep mode. And suddenly, fashion isn't about having 10 different outfits. It's about having one outfit that can become 10 different things. That sounds convenient, But now ask yourself one uncomfortable question. What happens when your clothes get damaged? A ripped seam, a stain, a tear, a bad smell. Today, you just take the clothes off and replace them. In this world, you're replacing part of your life without ever removing it. And that's where clothing stops being fashion and starts becoming infrastructure. If you're the kind of person who loves asking questions most people never think about, subscribe. There are plenty more strange ideas, surprising facts, and everyday mysteries to uncover. Now imagine you wake up 6 months into this new world. You barely remember what it felt like to change clothes. Your shirt is still the same shirt. Your pants are still the same pants. But your body isn't the same. You've gained a little weight. Your hair is longer. Your skin has changed. Maybe you got a scar. Normally, you just buy something new. Here, your clothes have to keep up with you. And that could completely change how clothing is designed. Instead of making fabric that lasts a season, companies would have to make fabric that lasts for years. Materials would need to stretch without losing their shape. Seams would need to survive thousands of movements. Areas that normally wear out, knees, elbows, waistbands, collars, would become engineering problems. And suddenly, a clothing brand isn't just selling you a style. It's selling you something closer to long-term equipment. That has another weird consequence. Fashion trends might slow down. Today, a style can go from hot to completely outdated in a few months because you can simply buy something new. But if you can't remove what you're wearing, you can't just swap into the latest trend. So designers might have to build fashion differently. Maybe color-changing fabric becomes normal. Maybe patterns can be updated electronically. Maybe tiny sections of the clothing can transform without replacing the whole thing. Instead of buying a new outfit, your outfit gets an update. And that could make fashion feel more like technology than clothing. But even that doesn't solve the biggest problem. Hygiene. Because your clothes are sitting against your skin all day. Your sweat, your skin oils, dead skin cells, dust, bacteria. Normally, the solution is painfully simple. Take everything off. Wash it. Put on something clean. In this world, that basic routine disappears. So scientists would have to design fabrics that manage the mess for you. Maybe the surface kills certain microbes. Maybe moisture gets pulled away from the skin. Maybe odors are chemically broken down. Maybe the fabric releases cleaning agents when it gets wet. And suddenly, something as boring as laundry becomes a giant technological challenge. But here's the part nobody would notice at first. Your clothes would start affecting your health. If the fabric traps too much heat, you're uncomfortable. If it holds too much moisture, your skin suffers. If it rubs against the same area for years, irritation becomes a serious problem. If the material isn't flexible enough, movement becomes harder. So doctors would have to think about clothing differently too. A rash might not just be a skin problem. It could be a fabric problem. A joint issue might partly be a clothing design problem. And hospitals would need to think about the patient's clothes almost like another layer of anatomy. Because you can't just say, take your clothes off. That sentence doesn't exist anymore, which means medicine has to adapt. And that creates a much bigger question. What happens when the thing touching your body 24/7 becomes impossible to separate from your health? Because at that point, clothing isn't something you wear. It's part of your environment. And now the problem gets bigger. Because your clothes aren't just touching your body anymore. They're traveling everywhere with you. To work, to the gym, to the bathroom, to the beach, to bed. And that means places built around changing clothes suddenly stop making sense. Think about it, Jim. Today, you finish a workout, grab your towel, head to the locker room, and change into something dry. In this world, you finish the workout wearing the exact same clothes you wore in. They're sweaty. They're warm. They're probably smelling pretty rough. And there is no quick fix. So gyms would have to change. You might see drying stations everywhere. Fabric cleaning booths. Climate-controlled changing chambers. Even though you aren't actually changing. Maybe the whole room is designed to clean and dry the person without removing the clothes. And that idea would spread far beyond gyms. Swimming pools would have a completely different design. A hotel couldn't assume guests could simply change before entering a pool. Hospitals couldn't ask patients to undress for an examination. Airport security would need different technology. Even clothing stores would become weird. Why try something on if you can never take it off? At that point, the fashion industry has a serious problem. You couldn't really sell clothes the way we do now. Instead, companies might scan your body and manufacture a permanent outfit specifically for you. One wrong measurement could follow you for years. And suddenly, getting dressed in the morning would feel less like choosing an outfit and more like selecting a piece of equipment before committing to it. But there's an even stranger social consequence. Think about nudity. Today, seeing someone without clothes can immediately tell you that you've entered a private situation. A locker room, a bathroom, a bedroom, a medical exam. Those spaces exist partly because clothing can come off. Take that option away, and the boundary between public and private gets blurry. You could be at home wearing exactly what you wear outside. You could be sleeping in the same outfit you wore all day. And suddenly, the idea of getting undressed would disappear from everyday life. That might sound minor. It isn't. Because humans use clothing to mark transitions. Work clothes tell your brain, work mode. Pajamas tell your brain, it's time to relax. Formal clothes can signal, this moment matters. If one outfit follows you everywhere, those signals disappear. So people might invent new ways to separate parts of the day. Maybe lighting changes. Maybe furniture changes. Maybe fabrics change texture. Maybe your clothes literally transform depending on where you are. And that would create something fascinating. Clothing would stop being just a visual choice and become a behavioral system. But we're still ignoring the biggest issue. What happens when your body needs medical treatment? Because imagine needing surgery. A doctor can't simply remove the clothing covering the area. They'd need another solution. Maybe medical clothing would be designed with microscopic access panels. Maybe fabrics could temporarily separate without being fully removed. Maybe entire hospitals would be built around scanning and treating the body through specialized materials. And suddenly, medicine, fashion, engineering, and technology all become connected by one ridiculous problem. A shirt you can't take off. But even that isn't the final nightmare. Because clothes can protect your body. They can also trap it. And over enough time, that could change something far more personal. How humans move, sleep, exercise, and even feel inside their own bodies. Now imagine you've lived with these permanent clothes for years. At this point, you barely think about them anymore. That's probably the most dangerous part. Because humans get used to almost anything. You stop noticing the fabric against your skin. You stop noticing the extra weight. You stop thinking about the fact that your clothes never come off. Until you try to do something your clothes were never designed for. Sleep. Normally, you can change into loose pajamas. You can take off your socks. You can get under the blanket and let your body cool down. In this world, you have none of those options. Your clothes stay on. So sleepwear would have to be completely reimagined. Maybe the fabric becomes extremely light. Maybe different parts loosen during the night. Maybe your outfit changes its temperature automatically. Because if your body gets too warm, you can't simply remove a layer. Your clothing has to solve the problem for you. And that creates another surprising consequence. Exercise would change too. Your body needs to release heat during intense activity. Sweat helps with cooling. But if your clothing is permanently sealed against your body, suddenly fabric has to become part of your body's cooling system. Sportswear might need tiny vents, moisture-moving fibers, temperature-sensitive materials, maybe even powered cooling. And the best athletes might not just have stronger bodies. They might have better clothing technology. Think about that. Today, we often ask which athlete is faster, stronger, or more talented. In this world, you might also ask, whose clothes regulate heat better? That could completely change professional sports. And then comes something much more personal. Your body changes. You age. You gain weight. You lose weight. You grow older. Your posture changes. Maybe you're pregnant. Maybe you recover from surgery. Normally, your clothes simply get replaced. But here, they're stuck with you. So your clothing would have to be able to expand, contract, reshape, and adjust around major changes in the human body. And pregnancy would be one of the biggest tests. A body can change dramatically during pregnancy. The permanent outfit would have to change with it. Maybe the fabric stretches. Maybe sections move. Maybe the clothing literally reorganizes its structure. And suddenly, Something that sounds like a fashion problem becomes a biological engineering problem. But there's an even stranger consequence. What happens when you hate what you're wearing? Today, you can look in a mirror and decide, I don't like this. Then you change. In this world, you can't. That means clothing could affect confidence in a completely different way. You couldn't escape a bad haircut by changing your outfit. You couldn't wear something different for a job interview. You couldn't put on something comfortable after a stressful day. The boundary between who you are and what you're wearing becomes much harder to separate. And that could change fashion, identity, status, even personality. Maybe people stop judging others by what they're wearing because everyone is permanently wearing something. Or maybe the opposite happens. Your permanent outfit becomes one of the strongest signals of who you are. The color, the texture, the design, the technology, the condition. People might know your identity before they know your name. And at that point, clothes aren't just covering your body. They're becoming part of your social identity. Which leaves us with one final problem. If humans can never take clothes off, what happens when the clothes themselves finally fail? After years of living with permanent clothes, the strangest thing might be how normal it starts to feel. You stop thinking about taking them off because you've never had the option. Your clothes become something you depend on for everything. They regulate your temperature. They handle sweat. They move with your body. They adapt when you grow. They even become part of how other people recognize you. But there's still one problem nobody can escape. Clothes wear out. No material lasts forever. Fibers weaken. Seams fail. Protective layers break down. And if your clothes are permanently attached to you, replacing them isn't as simple as going shopping. You would need a way to repair the thing that's basically wrapped around your body 24/7. That could create an entirely new industry. People might go to clothing clinics instead of clothing stores. Specialists could repair damaged fabric while you're still wearing it. Older clothing could be gradually replaced layer by layer. Maybe one day, your outfit could even manufacture new material to repair itself. And once that technology exists, clothing stops being something temporary altogether. It becomes more like a second skin, something designed to survive your entire life. And that changes the meaning of fashion. You wouldn't ask, what should I wear today? You'd ask, what do I want my permanent body layer to say about me? Your clothing could become your style, your identity, your protection, and your personal technology all at once. And that's the strange lesson here. We think clothes are temporary because we're used to taking them off. The moment that ability disappears, almost everything about clothing has to change. Not just the fabric, not just fashion, the relationship between your body and the world around it. And if you want to see what happens when humans lose another everyday layer of protection, the video on the left asks what life would look like if we never started wearing shoes. And if you're curious about another piece of clothing that quietly changed everyday life, the video on the right asks what if women never started wearing bras? Pick the one that makes you most curious and keep exploring.